We look at these old photographs, and we can't help but feel a little jealous. Look at the numbers. A loaf of white bread, 17 cents. A pound of hamburger meat, 29 cents. A dozen eggs, barely a quarter. It is easy to look at those prices and say those were the good old days. It is easy to think that money just went further back then. But that price tag is telling you a lie, or at least it is only telling you half the story. Because in 1955, you weren't paying for dinner. You were paying for ingredients. You weren't buying a product. You were buying a raw commodity. The reason that loaf of bread was 17 cents is because nobody in a factory had baked it for you yet. Nobody had sliced it. Nobody had wrapped it in plastic, and nobody had delivered it to your door. The 1955 kitchen was not a place of leisure. It was a factory. And the woman standing at that stove, she wasn't just a housewife. She was the manufacturer. She was the butcher. She was the baker. She took the raw materials of the earth, lard, flour, sugar, and bone, and she turned them into survival. Today, we are going to look at the real math of the 1955 grocery bill. We're going to find out why a cake costs 12 cents to make and why convenience is the silent killer of the modern family budget. Welcome to the scratch economy. If you opened a pantry door in 1955, it would look alien to a modern child. There were no colorful boxes of instant anything. There were no plastic cups of fruit, no just add water. Instead, there were sacks, 25 pounds of flour, 10 pounds of sugar, a tin of lard the size of a pink bucket. These weren't groceries, these were supplies. And this is the first secret of the 1955 budget, the bulk economy. Let's look at the math of a simple birthday cake. By the mid-50s, the box mix was starting to appear on shelves. It was the new luxury. Advertisers screamed that it was a miracle. But the frugal mother, the one watching the envelope system, she knew better. A box of cake mix might cost 35 cents, but if she bought the flour in bulk, that same amount of flour cost her 4 cents. The sugar, 3 cents. The egg, 2 cents. She could put that cake on the table for 9 cents, or she could buy the box for 35. That is a 300% markup. Economists call this value add. When you buy the box, you aren't paying for better flour. You are paying the salary of the man at the General Mills factory who mixed it for you. In 1955, the average family refused to pay that man. They kept that money in their pocket by keeping the labor in their own kitchen. They understood something we have forgotten. Convenience is a tax, and in 1955, most families simply couldn't afford to pay the tax. They wasted nothing, not even the grease, because when you understand the value of the raw material, you treat it like gold.
We talk about the money, but we forget the sweat, because in the 1950s, saving money wasn't a passive act, it was manual labor. There were no magic buttons, no microwaves, no Uber Eats. If you didn't cook, you didn't eat. The average housewife in 1955 spent between 4 to 6 hours a day on food preparation. She wasn't just making dinner, she was processing matter. Take the Sunday chicken. Today, we buy boneless, skinless breasts in a styrofoam tray. It is clean, it is sterile. In 1955, you bought the whole bird. Often, you had to singe the pin feathers off the neck yourself over the gas flame. You had to reach inside and pull out the organs. You had to cleave the bone. Why did they do it? Because a whole chicken cost 29 cents a pound, but cut up pieces, that cost double. You paid with your time to save your cash. And then there was the summer. When the tomatoes came in, the kitchen became a steam room. Canning wasn't a cute hobby for your grandmother. It was financial survival. Standing over a boiling kettle in August, peeling bushels of peaches, sealing jars of beans, she wasn't doing it for fun. She was banking calories for the winter. Every jar on that shelf was $1 she didn't have to give to the grocery store in January. It was grueling work, but it was profitable work. But then the world shifted. In 1953, a company called Swanson introduced something that would change the American budget forever: the TV dinner. The advertisers called it a miracle in a metal tray. They told women freedom, liberation, get out of the kitchen. They sold convenience as the ultimate dream. But they didn't mention the price. Let's look at the receipt. A frozen TV dinner in the mid-50s cost about 98 cents. 98 cents for a few ounces of turkey and some soggy peas. If a mother made that same meal from scratch, it cost her 30 cents per person. This was the turning point. This was the moment the American family started trading their wealth for their time. We stopped being producers. We became consumers. We fired the mother as the head chef, and we hired General Mills to replace her. And General Mills, they charge a premium fee. This is where the family budget began to bleed. Not because of inflation, not because of taxes, but because we started paying strangers to do what we used to do for free. We bought the convenience, but we lost the control. There was another rule in the 1955 kitchen, a rule that has almost vanished today. The garbage can is the enemy. You have to remember, the parents of the 50s had just survived the Great Depression. To them, throwing away food wasn't just wasteful, it was a sin. It was literally throwing money in the trash. They operated on the cycle of food. Sunday was the roast chicken. Monday, that was chicken sandwiches for the lunch pail. Tuesday, the bones went into the pot for soup. One purchase, 3 days of meals, 0 waste. And then there was the stretch. Mothers in 1955 were magicians at making expensive ingredients disappear into cheap ones. Think about the meatloaf. That wasn't just a recipe, it was a financial tactic. How do you make 1 pound of expensive beef feed a family of 6? You add oats, you add breadcrumbs, you add an egg to bind it. Today, the average American household throws away nearly 30% of the food they buy. We buy it, we let it rot, and we toss it. If you want to know why the grocery bill feels high, look in the trash can. In 1955, that can was empty. But there is one final piece of the math that doesn't make sense on paper. Look at what they ate. Bacon, eggs fried in butter, whole milk, red meat, lard crusts. By modern standards, they should have all been obese. But look at the photos. They weren't. Why? Because scratch food, even fatty food, is chemically different from processed food. In 1955, sugar was an ingredient you added with a spoon. You saw it. You controlled it. Today, high fructose corn syrup is hidden in everything, from your bread to your ketchup to that healthy granola bar. We didn't just outsource the cooking, we outsourced the chemistry. And this brings us to the hidden cost, the health dividend. The 1955 diet was cheaper to buy, and it was cheaper to survive. The modern diet is expensive at the checkout line, and it is expensive at the doctor's office. We save time in the kitchen, but we are paying for it in health care. That is a debt that no amount of coupons can pay off. So we look back at the 1955 kitchen. We don't look back to romanticize the drudgery. Let's be honest, it was hard, hot, relentless work. But we have to respect the math. We often complain that we can't afford to live like that anymore. But the hard truth is, we aren't willing to live like that. We aren't willing to spend 4 hours cooking to save $20. We aren't willing to cut up a whole chicken. We aren't willing to eat leftovers for 3 days straight. The ability to cook from scratch was more than just a chore. It was a financial asset. It was a skill that generated tax-free income for the family every single night at 6 o'clock. We traded that skill for convenience, and now we are paying the bill. What about you? Do you remember the smell of your mother's kitchen? Did she have a stretch meal that made the money last until payday? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for watching Vintage American Life.